Welcome back. This is part 2 of our series exploring the soul contract of a divine connection. So yesterday in part 1 we asked, why did this person come into your life? And what we can see is that this was a connection that felt extremely ancient, it feels very purposeful, and it is highly activating. We've got the 3 and the 4 of Wands. And we explore the soul contract that likely spans multiple lifetimes. And this is one that has stirred a lot of deep remembrance. And there's this inner fire and emotional entanglement. With the King of Wands, this showed us that this is someone who's come in to ignite your passions and your purpose. And then we have this Page of Cups, and this reminds us that this love might still be unfolding in unexpected ways. So it's very clear within this message that this was never purely about romance. This is also as a catalyst. And in part 2 now, we're going to go in a little deeper. We are going to have a look at what you are meant to awaken within each other. So I've got 2 identical decks, and we're going to bring both of them in for this. So this is going to represent you, and we're going to have a look. Spirit, can we please have a look? What were you meant to awaken within your person? What were you meant to awaken within your person? What do we need to know, please, Spirit? The purpose of meeting and what the viewer was meant to awaken within this person. We've got the 5 of Pentacles, and then the person that you're thinking of, what were they meant to awaken within you? What were they meant to awaken within the viewer, please, Spirit? Okay, we have got the 2 of Swords. So from you to them, it feels like you are a mirror. And within this mirror, it feels like you are stirring feelings that maybe they have long buried. And you're really calling them into this healing. And we're going to go into more depth about that. For them towards you, there's this crossroads energy, and it's really asked you to move beyond logic and into your deep intuition. So you might have found yourself quite torn or conflicted or questioning everything. And in doing so, you're actually beginning to awaken a higher knowledge within you. So together, this exchange is actually part of a contract to really bring buried wounds to light and to initiate one another in the next chapter of your soul path. So traditionally, the 5 of Pentacles is a card that speaks about abandonment and isolation and feeling unworthy. There's that deep sense of being left out in the cold. And this can often happen not just when a person is disconnected from others, but when they're also disconnected from themselves. And I feel that is exactly what you are mirroring to them. So in this particular card, the imagery is really powerful. We can see this central pentacle here, and it's marked by a skull. This is a symbol of death and transformation and truth that is stripped right down to the bone. And this might represent a kind of ego death or a reckoning that your presence has actually brought into their life. So you are awakening the parts of them that had been left untouched or avoided. Now, I've seen this card hundreds of times, but what stands out most to me today are these little stems that we're seeing that are leading to the other pentacles here. 2 of these pentacles, they show hands, and 2 of these pentacles show feet. Again, they're diagonally opposite each other, as in mirroring, exactly like we're talking about. Now, the other thing that is coming to my mind when I'm seeing this is a fragmented soul. There's pieces of them that are scattered and disembodied or ungrounded, both in the physical and in the emotional realms. And your connection may have really initiated a process where they're having to reclaim those pieces to come back into full embodiment. So learning how to walk again, how to feel again, how to reach again. So this card really tells us that your presence has stirred something quite primal in them. There's this realization of how far they've actually wandered from themselves. And this is an opportunity for them to come back to self. And I want to pause here for a moment, because saying those words, it makes it sound so simple, but it isn't. This is not a small thing. When you hold the mirror of the Five of Pentacles for someone else, this really stirs a level of soul recognition and emotional reckoning, and it is no easy feat. And many of you may have had to experience this yourself, because this is also a mirror. So you might have felt misunderstood. You might have felt left out. You might have felt emotionally abandoned, not just by other people, and especially maybe this person, but also the parts of you that were still hiding and hurting and still waiting to be brought home. And this isn't just their journey, this might be your journey too. I know for me that this card actually brings up a lot of memories of how deeply I had to go within. So there were moments when I had to face parts of myself that still felt unworthy or rejected or forgotten. And it wasn't necessarily about fixing someone else, it was about learning how to bring myself back into wholeness. And this part of it can often be extremely scary. And this is often when we see others go into runner mode, or we become the runners. And that's actually why I created the Awakening the Oracle, because this kind of soul level healing, it takes more than insight. It really requires embodiment, and it requires practice, and it really helps to be guided by someone who's lived it. So if you're in that place where everything in you is rising to be seen and to be healed and to be integrated, then that's certainly something that we work through inside that course, and you can find the link within my bio. Now to look at what they are meant to awaken within you. So in a traditional tarot card, this card would show a woman who's blindfolded, and you would see that she's holding the two swords crossed over her chest, and behind her you would usually see like a little sliver of moonlight in the sky. And this is symbolizing that this is not a decision to be made by logic alone, that she's not meant to rely on everything that she sees. She's been asked to rely on what she feels, on her intuition. So this card is a card of crossroads, of having to pause and turn inward when nothing in the external world tends to make sense. So this is a card about learning to trust yourself, not what's being said or shown, but what your inner knowing is telling you. Now, in this particular deck, the two swords, they are shown as what I think are steak knives. So they're sharper, they're very precise, and they're accompanied by these black and white flowers. And this is visually reminding us that not everything is black or white. This dynamic really may have pulled you into that space between, that grey area, where clarity only comes through your own deep personal truth. And the reason that in a traditional card, the woman holds the swords over her heart, it is for protection. So this connection might have taught you to guard your heart, not in fear, but in discernment, to know your worth, to stand your ground, to recognize when someone's energy is uncertain, and not to override your own boundaries just to keep that connection going. So what have they awakened within you? They've awakened your inner voice, your inner knowing, your strength, your intuition, and the ability to choose yourself even when the path ahead is still unclear. So tomorrow we're going to look at what is the unfinished business that is lingering between the both of you. But for today, let's finish on an oracle card. Spirit, what would you like to say about what each of them are teaching to the other? What would you like us to know at this moment, please? What would you like us to know at this moment? about this dynamic. Okay, we have got beady eye, probably keeping an eye on each other. I did also notice at the bottom of the deck we do have unconditional love. So in this beady eye card, we can see that there's this ever watchful raven and it's perched on a branch. But what's really interesting, and I am the designer of this card, but it's really interesting as I'm looking at this, is that this one branch, it carries both oak and maple leaves. And this really does speak about furtive observation, the kind of energy where you and this person might be deeply attuned to each other's movements, even from a distance. So whether it's checking out each other's social media or tuning in energetically, or simply sensing one another without words, there's a strong sense that neither of you has fully let go. You might not be speaking, but you're still watching and still listening and still feeling. So the raven here, in myth and within spiritual symbolism, this is a messenger between worlds, a guide who carries insight from the unseen into the known, and it's very much associated with shadow work and magic and prophecy. And when the raven shows up in this form, it really suggests that the both of you might have been going through a period of introspection. Again, I feel like there could be some sort of unspoken connection and a deep soul learning, as to what is happening within the silence. And then when we look at, I don't know why I did this. I really don't know why I would put oak and maple leaves on this. These are two very different energies, but they both share the same branch. So oak, it very much represents strength and endurance and ancient wisdom. And it really holds the energy of long-standing soul contracts, which is something that we have already discerned as of yesterday. And, this is the kind that really takes root below the surface, and it can weather many seasons. The maple, on the other hand, is very much associated with sweetness and change and letting go. And this is the call to allow the transformation and the flow. So they both exist on the same branch here, and I feel that is so symbolic, even though when I was designing it, I wasn't doing that with that in mind. It's really only coming up within this reading. And it feels like the stability of the soul bond and the need for personal transformation is held with both of these energies. So there might be part of you that's really holding steady, and there might be another part that knows that change is inevitable. And then finally, with the unconditional love at the bottom of the deck, we're very much reminded that beneath all of the complications and maybe the silence and maybe the intensity, that there is love. Pure soul love that actually doesn't need to be earned or proven or explained. It's there. Even if there is distance between the both of you, that love still exists. Once again, I like to remind you that this is a collective reading, and if you would like your own private reading, you can go to the link in my bio that will take you to all of my offerings. Waiting for that to come up. The first offering is the 6-month course, and it's very much for those of you that have been awakened by a beautiful soul connection and are wondering what is happening, and you're going through your own evolution. For those of you that would like a personal reading, the links are here. We have same-day readings, and also I offer soul contract readings. They are all written here within. For those of you that have ever been curious about learning tarot, I do have an online beginners and an intermediate course. All of the decks that I have used today you can find under this section here, my favorite tarot cards. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we are going to talk about the unfinished business between you.